Greetings, Cleveland, and welcome to Creative Focus, the show that illuminates some of Cleveland's most talented and creative artists across the genres of dance, film, music, theater, and visual arts. I'm your host, Cornell Calhoun III, and I am thrilled to have as my guest today on Creative Focus one of the most talented artists in Northeast Ohio. Actress, director, playwright, and currently the Associate Artistic Director at the historic Karamu House, Miss Nina Domingue. Nina, welcome to Creative Focus, girl. Let's chop it up.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So before we really, get into the show, I want to address something that's deep.
Okay.
Okay. I heard you in an interview with Jay Stevens. And you talked about being called female as opposed to being called a woman.
Yes.
And that was so profound. I was like, man, she has to elaborate that on my show.
For sure.
So the stage is yours.
Hey, we talking my language. Okay, so the reason why it's offensive to call a woman female is because it denies your humanity. Female is a designation that, like male, speaks to your reproductive ability, right? So you can have a female dog, you can have a female cow, you can have a female frog, you can have a female bird, but none of those things are human. And when we call women females, we are othering them, we are lowering them. And it's disrespectful, and it's more respectful to address a person's humanity because it's easier to discount their opinion, their feelings, or even their desires if they're less than human. And that's what was done to us during enslavement. And it's one thing when we talk about portraying a character that might not have that understanding, if we're writing a character that doesn't have that understanding, but once we are older and we know better, then we're accountable to that, because we all have room for grace and for growth. And especially if you came up hip hop generation, that's what we did, but we don't go around calling people males, and people would look at you crazy if you did. So, yeah. Yeah,
no, I thought that was so profound. I said, hey, I had to, kind of change my plan and do a little bit, because I just thought that our audience need to hear that.
Well, thank you for letting me.
No, you laid it out.
Yeah.
So, hey, so you're from, and I got to ask you this, is it New Orleans or is it New Orleans? Or does it depend on if you're from New Orleans or New Orleans?
Well, yes. Yes, it does. We call it New Orleans.
Okay.
If it's in a song and it's rhyming, you can say New Orleans.
Got you.
Because it's got to fit into the rhyme.
Right.
But nobody from New Orleans says N'Orleans. Nobody who's born and raised in New Orleans says NOLA. Right. Okay. Like we might hashtag NOLA, but yeah, it's New Orleans.
I wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
So how do you think New Orleans influence you as an artist?
Oh, it was not clear to me at the beginning of my journey, but sitting where I sit now, everything about growing up in the city influenced me. I woke up, my alarm clock in the morning was Kennedy and McDonald No. 35's marching band practicing. Like I woke up to brass. Okay. I woke up to that standing drum step, that because they practice all year round from Mardi Gras to Mardi Gras.
Okay.
So at 6 a.m., you start hearing that if you're in the right neighborhood. And I didn't realize I missed that until I had been living in Cleveland for about 4 or 5 years and randomly heard a band rehearsing and just had a full physical, visceral reaction to the sound. And I was like, oh, I haven't heard that as like a piece of my everyday background environment for 5 years. Yeah, it messed with me a little bit. So there's that. And also, like, New Orleans is a beautiful city. The homes are colorful. Like, the street look like this, you know? It's like you go down the street and you'll see a pink house, a yellow house, a aqua house, a purple house.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. In certain parts of the city, it's very much that. And there is public art everywhere, because it really is a visual art and music town. And it's so green and lush. It is so hot and humid. It's like, I joke, you can scoop your hand through there and come away with a cup of water, you know. But all of those things influenced me very much, and they weren't necessarily things that I understood, because they were just, you know, they're just a part of me. It's what I do.
Right.
But I believe it was Faye Charlatan who pointed out to me, you know, Nina, anytime you write something, there are always big themes of heat and water. And I was like, you're right. Because I didn't recognize it, because it's just a part of my makeup.
Exactly.
But once it was pointed out to me, I was able to become more intentional about including those things. And it's a very spiritual city in many different ways. You know, there is a lot of people, you know, we still have parishes. We don't have counties. We still have parishes because Louisiana was founded by the French. And whereas the British were their colonies, they were trying to be Protestant and leave the church, the French were like, well, we're Catholic. That's what it is. And not that their enslavement was any better, it was just different. You know, the British went to all different regions, broke people apart, purposefully stripped language and religion. And the French were, the first rule of the Code Noir, which was the governing body of laws, stated everyone in the colony, black, free, enslaved, indentured servant, whatever, had to be baptized Catholic to live there. They went to like a particular region in Senegal, Mali, you know, picked up the Bambara people and a couple of other, and Benin, and picked those folk up who were practicing voodoo and voodoo and brought them. And they were like, sure, we're Catholic. You just paint them white and call them the wrong name, whatever.
You know, the last time I actually saw you was in Paradise Blue.
Oh, yeah.
I saw that play 4 times.
Did you?
Yes. And I actually talked with the wonderful playwright, Dominique Maruso, about it. What do you remember about that production at Karamu? Because that was just before the pandemic.
It was. I mean, you know, it was the first time that I had played a Black Creole woman that I had not written myself.
Silver, was it?
Yes, Silver. And Justin Emeka, who was our director.
He directed us in Ma Rainey.
Yes. He, you know, Justin is such a gracious director. He really allows you to bring your own ideas and creativity to the process. And, you know, he pretty much said, Nina, you know about this. Do what you do.
Yeah, you were fabulous in that show. I saw it, like I said, 4 times, and I had to pay, so, you know.
Yeah, because there are a couple things that weren't in the script that I requested. And like there's a moment in my interpretation of Silver after she has a confrontation with Blue, where she goes back up to the upstairs apartment, and I have her bless the door and bless herself with Florida water. And now that's not in the script, but that's a very Creole thing to do.
Okay, yeah.
And a very hoodoo thing to do, you know. And I think, in my interpretation, that in order for Silver to survive in the 30s, 40s, the way she does, she got to be working somebody's route.
Got to be working somebody's route. You know, you are the queen, and I'm so impressed with you. You are the queen of one-woman shows. I mean, I couldn't even conceive of doing a one-man show. I mean, I wouldn't want to be on stage that long by myself anyway. But you did a play at the Cleveland Public Theater about Joan.
Southgate. Yes.
Talk about that experience.
Miss Southgate is, first of all, still alive. She's 94.
94.
She is a precious person to all of us, and in my life in particular. She has really been a surrogate grandmother because I don't have my grandmothers anymore. But Joan, I met Joan when she was 78, about 5 years after she had completed the walk. If you don't know, when Joan was 73, for the audience, she decided to retrace the Underground Railroad route from Ripley, Ohio to St. Catharines in Canada. And she did it the way, as close to the way as our ancestors would have done it. She had safe houses, and these people were not necessarily people that she knew. You know, they were people who heard about what she was trying to accomplish and was like, we volunteer, she can stay here for the night. And just made her way. And I met her when she was giving a talk about having done the walk. And I was like, who is this woman? I have to know her, because why would you do that right. when you're 73?
How could you do that?
Right.
Yeah.
And she trained for a good year to do the walk.
Wow.
And so, a few years into our friendship, she brought me her memoir and said, Nina, I want you to write a play about my life, and dropped it in my lap and walked away. And I think it was Tish, her daughter Tish, was sitting next to me. And I looked at her and she said, that's mama. I was like, what I'm supposed to do with this? And she said, write the play.
and that's what you did.
And I'm gonna be fully accountable and honest. I was terrified. It felt like such a big responsibility. And I took the memoir, and I took the memoir specifically about the walk that she had done, and called In Their Path. And I put them in an airtight box, and I put it in my attic for 10 years. I was terrified. I was terrified to write it. And I think I had to write Your Mama first and get that out of me.
That was another woman play show that you did.
Yes, that was another one.
Okay.
And then I had room to do it, and I had lived some more life. And Joan was getting older, and Raymond and I were talking, and he's like, Nina, we want her to live forever. However, if we want to do this while she is still with us, we should probably get started. It's like, you're right. And so I started writing.
And how long did it take you to complete it?
It took about 2-3 years.
Ooh.
Because when I first started, everyone was like, oh, Nina's writing a play about the walk. She's writing a play about the walk. And I was like, I don't want to write a play about the walk, because she has a whole memoir about the walk. There is a documentary about the walk. There are over 75 articles about the walk. People know about the walk.
Okay.
I want to know about the woman. I want to know what kind of life would lead you to do that kind of thing when you are 73. Because by that time, Joan had been, she had been married and widowed. She was a mother. She was a grandmother. She had been a social worker, an educator, a poet. Like, she has lived so many lives already. It's like, so what makes you do that kind of thing? And as I read About Time, the first memoir, I started to see different things. Like, her mother was one of the children who used to watch over Harriet Tubman.
Wow.
And it's like, well, of course, if you're a woman who grew up hearing stories from your mother about Harriet Tubman, who she used to go sit, her mother and her friends would, when Harriet would bring her horse and buggy to this particular field, she would fall asleep because she had narcolepsy from the brick having been thrown at her. And they would stop playing and watch her and wait and make sure nobody disturbed her while she was sleeping. And if you grow up as a little girl hearing this story about Harriet Tubman, of course you're gonna walk on the ground.
Right.
And just lots of other experiences that she had had, but it's important to me, particularly as a Black woman, to preserve our stories. And
because you're a storyteller.
I am.
Like our friend Hassan Rogers.
I am. Yeah.
So let's take a look at a clip from the one-woman show of Joan.
All right.
Southgate.
The low hum singing, she'd call in the words. Early one morning, death come knocking at my door. Oh, early one morning, death come knocking at my door. Early one morning, death come knocking at my door. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? There was this man, Mr. Johnson of the Auburn Johnsons, walking along down Finch Avenue, heard horse hoof beat pounding out a death rattle rhythm right up behind him, keeping time just as steady as you please. He was on his way to work because it was early. He worked at the rope factory where they took hemp and wove it into big old cables strong enough to pull an ocean line. Where my mother worked herself when she was young, 18 years old young, before she met my father. And when Mr. Johnson turned around to look see where he thought the milkman's wagon was coming up behind him, not a soul on the road. He was all by himself, walking. Ooh, Mr. Johnson was scared because it was early, still dark morning early. Ooh, he didn't have a carriage or a wagon of his own, so he started running to try to shake it off. And he stopped when he got to work. He didn't want his friends to think he had seen a ghost and was scared. He found it hard to work all that day. You see, it was winter, and that meant it was going to be dark on the other side of his working day. All the way walking back home, Mr. Johnson could not help but looking over his shoulder. And as he got close to his house, a cold chill went through his body. It was the same feeling he had had before. And when he got to the porch, there were people milling all around, making low, whispered sounds. He could see a light on in every room of his house. But his wife was nowhere to be found. And what about Samuel? Where was his baby boy? Reverend Smith broke the news.
So Nina, what are the challenges do you think, of creating a one-woman show? As opposed to, just regular theater when we're on stage with an ensemble.
Yeah. It's lonely. It's very lonely in process, right? In process with an ensemble, you get to play off your fellow actors.
Good point. Good point.
And in solo show, you have to be full enough as every character to play off yourself and play off your audience. And so, people ask me, and I think this is one of the questions you sent me, do I work with a director or direct myself? I always have a director. There is absolutely no way on God's green earth I could do this alone. because at the end of the day, I'm telling the story to someone. And so your director, your stage manager, your designers, whoever is in the room is your first audience. And I can't see myself. So the only way to know if what I think I'm doing is landing is to have somebody watching me and helping me shape it.
Giving you that feedback too, giving you that feedback.
Yeah,
okay.
Because it's so much, and they're so different, like they can be so different. You know, there are solo shows that it's like a monologue, a monologue, a monologue, a monologue. And then there are those that have a narrator and you go through scenes. And they can literally be anything. That's the other challenge. It could be anything at all. But it can be very lonely work until the audience is there. Yeah. And
so let's talk about your position at Karamu, the historic Karamu. I mean, you know, I'm a Karamu baby from way back. I auditioned for my first show in 1978. It was I can't think of it now.
Was it the Mighty Scarabs?
No, it was the Brownsville Raid.
Yes, it was.
The Brownsville Raid. That's the first show I auditioned for. So I want you to tell me something that you learned about Karamu working there that you didn't know before, working with our fabulous friend Tony Sayas, the president and CEO.
Yes. I did not know how Karamu got its name before I started working there and giving tours. So
how did it get its name?
I'm going to tell you.
Okay. I should wait.
Right. It's okay. No, because so there was, you know, originally Karamu was known as the Playhouse Settlement.
Right.
Started by Russell and Rowena Jelliff.
Yes.
And it was during the Settlement House movement after the World Wars, and there was a mysterious fire in 1939, and it was proven that the fire was arson. They were never able to prove who did it, but it was proven that it was arson because people were not happy about the intermingling of races, right? So the original Playhouse Settlement building was burned down. When the new building was getting dedicated, they had a naming contest. The Jelliffs had a naming contest. And the woman Hazel Mountain Walker submitted the name Karamu. And what is significant about Miss Walker, she was the first Black woman in Ohio to pass the bar and become a lawyer. And she was also the first Black woman to be a principal of a CMSD school.
Wow. Right.
So it's like every thread in the fabric of Karamu has some historically significant community member attached to it. I love, so when you go to Karamu, when you go on a tour, in the administration and education building, there is a gorgeous quilt that was dedicated to Karamu at the 75th anniversary by the Cleveland Doll and Quilt Guild. And there is a square dedicated to Hazel Mountain Walker and the naming of Karamu. So,
okay. Yeah. Wow. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I watched you in a video, Color Girls video. That I thought was so spectacular. Aww. I want to share with the audience. But before I do, talk about that Color Girls play. How does that resonate with you?
Listen, listen. I call myself one of Zaki's daughters. I had the absolute honor and privilege of being able to meet and get to know Ntozake while she was still with us through Diane McIntyre.
Oh yeah, Diane McIntyre.
Yeah, and was able to perform in Woody King at New Federal Theater in New York had done a month-long retrospective of all of Ntozake's work in 2006.
Okay.
And Diane was directing a piece, and I was able to be in that piece and meet Ntozake and like so many people who have been great friends with her and perform her work and all of those things. And my first lead at Karamu, after I had graduated from grad school, was The Lady in Red.
The Lady in Red.
The Lady in Red. And
for
Diane.
Color Girls.
Yes, and for Color Girls.
Yeah.
And Diane was directing Crowns at the Cleveland Playhouse at the time. And Trezana Beverly, who was the original Lady in Red on Broadway, was in that production of Crowns.
Okay.
And Diane brought them to see us. I'm glad they did not tell us beforehand.
Right, yeah.
And you know, Trezana is very tall. Trezana is almost 6 feet tall. And I'm only 5 feet tall. And so after the show, you know, they told us, they're in the audience, y'all gotta go. Yeah. And so we went to say hello, and Trezana looked at me and she said, "You did very well." And that was all I needed for the rest of my life.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
It's one of those plays that, like, at some point, I've at this point played Lady in Red, Lady in Brown, and Lady in Orange. I will do For Color Girls till I die. It is absolutely transformative when you're a young woman in your 20s, to be able to step inside that work. And Ntozake's, you know, people just know For Color Girls, but there is such a breadth of work. There is so much work that she wrote outside of For Color Girls.
Did she write Spell Number 7?
Yes, Spell Number 7 is Ntozake. I mean, and she has novels, she has essays. She considers herself a poet first. You know, there is so much work of Ntozake's. If For Color Girls is all that you have read, you are doing yourself a serious disservice. And it is work that you can return to again and again and find new things at every stage of life. We had a joke when we were doing the piece in the retrospective. It hasn't always been this way, that sometimes you got to read a 400-page book to get a phrase that's referenced in some of Ntozake's work and truly understand it and be able to interpret it properly. But yeah, it is, her work is still transformative.
So let's take a look at that monologue featuring Miss Nina Domingue. For Color Girls.
The library was down from the trolley tracks, right across from the laundromat. Through those shining floors and granite pillars old St. Louis was famous for, I found Toussaint. Not till after months of Cajun Katie, Pippi Longstocking, Christopher Robin, Eddie Hayward, and a Pooh Bear in the children's room. Nothing but pioneer girls and magic rabbits and big city white boys. I knew I wasn't supposed to. But I snuck into the adult reading room and came across Toussaint Louverture, my first black man. I didn't count George Washington Carver because I don't like peanuts. Still, Toussaint Louverture was a black man, a Negro, like my mama say, who refused to be a slave. And he spoke French, and he didn't allow no white man to tell him nothing. Not Napoleon, not Maximilian, not Robespierre. Toussaint Louverture was the beginning of reality for me. In the summer contest for who colored child could read 15 books in 3 weeks, I won and raved about Toussaint Louverture at the afternoon ceremony. Was disqualified because Toussaint belonged in the adult reading room. And I cried. Carried dead Toussaint home with me in the book. He was dead and living to me. Because Toussaint and them, they held the citadel against the French. Toussaint led their army with the spirits of old dead Africans from out of the ground. He led that army of zombies, walking cannonballs, shooting spirits to free Haiti, and they wasn't slaves no more. Toussaint Louverture became my secret lover at the age of 8. I entertained him under the covers with a flashlight way into the night. We discussed strategies, how to remove white girls from my hopscotch games, and etc. Toussaint was laying in bed with me next to Raggedy Ann the night I decided to run away from my integrated home, integrated street, integrated school. 1955 was not a very good year for little black girls.
So I got a great question for you now.
Okay.
Playwright, director, actress, do you have a preference?
Yes, I do, believe it or not.
Do you really?
I do. Acting is my preference. Acting is what I studied and am still paying for. But acting is my preference. It's where I feel my, if there is such a thing, my mastery sits. And it is what saved my life.
How?
I had a very traumatic childhood. It's not a secret, especially if you've seen your mama. And one of the, how do I say it? One of the things that I had to learn how to do as a kid because of the environment I was living in was not show emotion at all. I had to be very neutral at all times. Happy, sad, indifferent had to be neutral. And so it became the only outlet of expression for me where I could do it safely and I could do it repeatedly. And it caused a lot of healing for me in a lot of ways. Because when one of the things you'll hear young actors often say is, they'll be reading their script and see what their character does, and they'll say, well, I would never do that. Exactly. You wouldn't. But this person does. And it's our job to figure out why and to tell the truth of their story, not to change it, right? And often, perfect example. I did Flying West when I was in grad school for the first time. I've done it a couple times, but that was the first time. And I played the character Fanny. And Flying West is by Pearl Cleage, set in Nicodemus, Kansas in the 1850s. And it's about this all-black settlement town that is surrounded by 3 other white towns. And, what's happening in the world is that they're trying to get these black folk to give them their land. At the center of the story is Miss Leah, Sophie, Fanny, and Minnie. Fanny and Minnie were born free. Sophie emancipated herself, Miss Leah emancipated herself. All of this stuff happens before the play, right? And they meet up and they're this family. Well, Minnie, the youngest sister, is an opera singer. So they get this money together and they send her to the conservatory or whatever. She gets married to a man who is passé blanc. And he thinks he's getting an inheritance from his birth father's plantation. Well, he's not. And the sisters are sitting on this land. And so he's like, oh, well, that's how I can make my fortune. I'm going to get Minnie's piece of the land. And so we find out during the course of the play that it's a domestic violence situation. He's beating her. Now, my character, Fanny, takes the position and she's like, it's okay. You'll be okay. It's just the pressure. It's just, it happened. Just forgive him and go on living, right? Now, Nina would never. In college, I worked at a safe house for abused women. I would never, could never. Like, I will never tell you to just take a beating and stay with it. But that's what my character did. So I had to figure out why she would do that. Like, how could any black woman tell another black woman, oh, girl, just go and get beat,
Right, exactly.
Especially your baby sister. But when I worked with my professors and my director and dug into the text, we found there was one story that Fanny tells about seeing her father hit her mother. And she tells the explanation that her mother gave. And that's exactly the explanation that she gives to her sister. And when I go further into the text analysis, Fanny's overarching objective is to preserve the family, to keep the family together at all costs. And if that means begging my sister to take a beating so we can preserve this family, because that's my main desire. If I was that woman at that time, in that circumstance, I understand how she could say it. That was one of the hardest things I ever had to do as an actor, because it's not me. It's the truth of her story. And it's not my job as the interpreter to judge my character. My job is to tell the truth of their story, right?
Right.
And to tell it fully, because then what happens, if I do it right, is the audience goes, why would you tell her that?
Right, exactly.
And then we get to the later scenes where she does, and then we get to the other scenes where Miss Leah tells them about baking a pie. And you should go read the play. I'm not going to give it away.
What do you think separates you from other performers? What is your talud de grand? Why are you so sought after? And I'm being honest.
I mean, I think it's because of the thing I just described. People often say, like, what was your favorite role? The one I'm doing. Whichever one I'm doing now is my favorite. Like, I have to, and sure, Lady in Red, forever in my heart. Fanny, forever in my heart. Like, there are many. But what I'm doing now, it's an exercise in being present. It's one of the biggest differences between theater and film. I have to really be present and listen with that ensemble member, with my fellow actors. And it's like, what are they giving me? And it's like, I can have fidelity in my performance across 4 or 5 weeks, but if they come on feeling a little different today, I can't just keep saying the line the way I've always said it.
Right.
I have to react to what you're giving me. And find a way to do that within the world of the play, but also acknowledging what's happening here today, because the audience is a character, right?
Right.
What are they giving us that's different? And still tell the truth of this story in this moment today. Yeah.
If you had a dream character, and because you're a writer, you could create her. If you had a dream character to portray, who would she be?
Oh my gosh.
Because you can write her. A lot of people can't, They would have to depend on someone else.
I'm okay. I know some brilliant people. I'm okay. I'm getting better, but I'm okay. I think a dream role, I'm a big sci-fi nerd.
Okay.
I really am. Like, if I could be on Star Trek. But also, I love all of the Black sci-fi, fantasy, Afrofuturist literature that's out right now. I would love to be in anything by Octavia Butler that's been adapted, anything by N.K. Jemisin that's being adapted. Those are actually uncharted territory for me right now. I would love to be in a sci-fi something.
Was there a program called Monologue Mondays?
Yes.
Just talk about that a little bit.
Monologue Mondays was actually started by Kaleem Hill, who was...
Oh, I know Kaleem.
Yeah, you know Kaleem.
Yeah.
Kaleem was one of my students.
Right, okay.
At Cleveland School of the Arts, and Monologue Mondays was a thing he had started for a while, and we just got to, it's like, pick a monologue, what's something you want to do that you haven't done, and go for it.
Yeah, the reason why I bring that up is because...
Oh, did you find it?
I found you in a Monologue Monday that I want to share with the audience. It was fabulous.
Role too. The role in The African Company Presents Richard III, I would love to play that role. Yes.
Let's take a look at Monologue Mondays with Miss Nina Domingue.
No, I don't see it. I do not see it at all. No, how? This man kills my husband and my father, and I'm supposed to turn around and marry him because of some sweet talk? That don't make no sense. You know, I don't mind the part where I call him a foul lump of deformity. That's where the play gets it right. I should take a stick to him. That's the part that should be in the story. Because I'm mad. I don't want people seeing me and going around thinking I'm the kind of person that would accept something like that. Jimmy, I can't do what you're asking me to do. I can't be such a slack woman as Lady Anne. I mean, look what he say about her when she leave. Was ever a woman in this humor wooed? Was ever a woman in this humor won? I'll have her, but I'll not keep her long. What kind of mess is that? I gotta look out for me. I have to take care of myself. Nobody takes care of me. I can't have people thinking they can woo me and humor me and take advantage of me like that. It's hard for me, Jimmy. It's not easy for me to get out of them people's house every day. I can't tell them where I'm going. They never let me out, so I gotta make up something every time. Somebody always sick or dying. A cousin here, uncle there. Now tell me, how long you think I can keep that kind of lying up? And where else do I get to be a queen? Except in this play with the African company. Yeah, I like it. And it's not that I don't want to do it, I just don't want that part. It don't make no sense. And don't tell me not to think about the words again. It's the words make me mad, it's what they about. No self-respecting woman would pull his eyes out, kick him in a place where he won't be knocking on no bedchambers no more. And you want me to pretend? I don't know how. I don't have a husband. I don't know my father nor my mother. There's just me. Every colored child come into this world, born in a little basket on somebody's doorstep. And if she's a girl child, when she grow up and start to look like a woman, there will always be a King Richard waiting to lay with her. And like that play say, oh, they'll have us, but they won't keep us long. And the baskets keep filling up and moving from doorstep to doorstep to doorstep. And you want me to pretend? How am I supposed to pretend, Jimmy? Ain't no pretending in that. And if you think rehearsing this play is all we got to talk about, you can talk to yourself.
I found that monologue and I said, I have to share this with the audience. I have to share this with the audience. So let's talk a little bit about your directing. I mean, sure. I know you directed several shows. Yes. I mean, I saw Stu, yes. With my actress Logan, Dora yes. Williams, yes. and Christina Johnson. Yeah, you know, those are my ladies. They're always in my shows and yeah. my films. And then Skeleton Crew yes. at the Dobama, yes. a fabulous show. Yes. Talk about directing.
Sure.
In your aspect of it. Sure.
I love, so acting is my preference, mm-hmm. but I also love directing. I am a process junkie. Like, I love a juicy process. Mm-hmm. And I love providing a space and creating a room where it can be a playground for actors, and just leading them to aspects of performance that they may not realize they have in them, you know, and shaping a story. You know, the biggest difference, besides the technical differences, right, between acting and directing, for me, when I'm acting, I'm concerned with my lane. my role and what my job is to move the story forward. But as the director, you have all of the pieces of the puzzle, right? So you're working with the lighting designer to create mood and look, with the set designer to make sure that the space is what, you know, your interpretation of what the playwright gives you, and it's also functional, and that the designer is able to put their creativity into it. Like sound in Stew was so subtle but so important. You know, the sound of that stew bubbling the entire time was so essential. You know, so it's like, you know, being able to kind of have an eye on all of those aspects and do things that are real subtle, that the audience may not like pick up on right away, but it affects, like for Mountaintop, for example, by Katori Hall. In that show, Katori is playing with our idea of who we think Martin Luther King, the icon, is. And she's like, no, I want you to see his humanity. I want you to see that he was a man. He was flawed. He was human. Because if he's an icon, then none of us can do what he did. But if he's a man, if he is simply a man who was able to do great things, then we are all accountable for doing our own great things too, because he was human and I'm human, right? So rather than having the set centered, it was all slightly off center. Everything was just slightly out of symmetry. So it's like you walk in and you look at it and it's like, oh, but something is a little off, and you can't quite put your finger on it. That was purposeful, right? So that's the stuff I love about directing.
Do you remember the first play that you directed?
Yes, I do. Professionally or otherwise?
Professionally.
Professionally. Do I? Yes. It was a show in New Orleans. Yes, it was a show in New Orleans called, it was actually written by one of my classmates. And it was called Gin and Juice, but gin was spelled gin, D-J-I-N-N, like African gin. Okay. And I directed that for the New Orleans Black Theater Festival. Yeah. That was the first one.
And then what's the last show you do?
The last show I directed was The Bubbly Black Girl.
From Karamu, right?
Yeah, the spring musical, yes.
So what's next for you?
The Breakfast at the Bookstore by Lisa Langford.
Okay.
Yes, so that's after Black Nativity, running December 1st through December 16th at the Allen Theater, presented by the Playhouse Square in partnership with Cleveland Playhouse, produced by Karamu House. Black Nativity is our next show. And the show after that is The Breakfast at the Bookstore by Lisa Langford.
When's Black Nativity open?
December 1st.
December 1st.
And it runs through the 16th.
Okay.
And you should get your tickets now.
Okay.
Because even though it is a Karamu classic, and it is done almost every year, you've never seen it like this.
Okay.
It has brand new design.
Who's directing that?
Tony Sayas.
Tony Sayas.
And Aaron Weaver. They are co-directing. Aaron is also our choreographer.
Okay.
But she and Tony are co-directing this year.
Oh, that should be fabulous. Yeah. Fabulous.
Yeah. We're excited. And Christina Johnson.
Of course.
She has been in the ensemble many times. This year she is also the narrator. So y'all got to come check it out.
Yeah, they got to come. Yeah. Nina, thank you so much for being on the show, man. It's been a blast.
Thank you for having me.
So that's it, Cleveland. We're out. But remember, a true artist is not only inspired, but inspires others. I'm Cornell Hubert Collin III for TV 20 and Creative Focus. Until the next time becomes our time, be well, be safe.